I have been lucky enough to live in both San Diego and Atlanta. The first time I lived in San Diego was in college. That was a few moons ago back at UCSD. I moved away and now I have been back in San Diego since May of 2020. I spent from 2012 to 2020 in Atlanta and I loved it there, but I was always coming back to San Diego. I was always coming back to California because for me, California, the weather, the West Coast will always win out. But if you're thinking about which one to live in, whether you should go for San Diego or you should go for Atlanta, or if you're moving from one to the other and just want to know kind of what to expect, that's what I'm going to cover for you in this video. Let's talk about 12 differences and similarities of these two cities that I have loved to live in, and I think you would love to live in either one. So let's dive in and talk about what makes these cities great. Hi, my name is Allesen. I'm a real estate agent here in beautiful San Diego, California. I was an agent in San Diego for 6 years. And if you are thinking about moving to San Diego, I would love to help you figure out kind of where to land now. And if you are moving to Atlanta, let me know. I'd love to get you in touch with somebody out there who can help you out and take really good care of you. Okay, let's get into this topic. The first thing I'm going to talk about is location, because obviously a big one. And, there's some pretty glaring differences in these two places. One's on the West Coast and one's on the East Coast. And one is at the coast and one is 4 hours from the coast. So they're very different places. And a lot of where you're going to decide to land is probably going to have to do with where your family is, where you're from, all of that. But it may also have to do with what those locations offer. So for San Diego, one of the great things about it is you can drive to like all of Southern California. You can drive to Arizona and Nevada and Mexico. You can also fly out of Mexico to other places for a lot less than it costs to fly in the US, which is really, really kind of a nice thing. We're also much closer to most of Mexico. We're much closer to Hawaii. And, if you want to go to Australia, it's easier from this coast. But if you're in Atlanta, you get to go to the Caribbean. You can go to Europe easier. You can go to the entire eastern side of the country easier. If you want to go to New York, heck of a lot easier from Atlanta. So two very different places. One of the great things about the location of San Diego that I really love is that yes, we're at the coast, but we can be in the mountains in about an hour and we can be at skiing in probably 2 to 3 hours. In Atlanta, you can get to the mountains really quickly also, and obviously the snow, and the snow also comes to Atlanta. I don't quite know where the skiing is from Atlanta, partly because I don't ski, but I also don't remember people actually going skiing from Atlanta. I feel like the day trip options are more varied from San Diego, and I feel like it's easier to drive places from San Diego. From Atlanta, like if you're going to a different state, it's a much further drive to get to more places that you might want to go than in San Diego. The next difference is size and layout. So Atlanta is a big city, but San Diego is a much bigger city. Atlanta is laid out where there is a freeway that goes around the entire city, and that is called the perimeter. It's 285. Inside the perimeter is like Atlanta, it's like the city, and then outside the perimeter is the suburbs. In San Diego, we have kind of like around downtown San Diego is like central San Diego. The definitions of where that kind of goes can vary, but then we have North County, which is the burbs. And then we have East County, which is the burbs. And then we have the South Bay, which I don't think really people think of as the burbs, but it's the burbs. But Central San Diego is kind of like the similar concept to ITP inside the perimeter in Atlanta. It's kind of where all the fun stuff is, right? It's like where all the stuff that gets the news time is. So like all the new restaurants, they're gonna open in like the Gas Lamp in San Diego or downtown, and same with Atlanta. They're gonna all kind of open along the Beltline, downtown Atlanta, like in those like areas that are more in the central part of things. I used to say that I would never ever live in North County, San Diego. I now live in North County, San Diego. I'm just barely in it, but I am. And the reason is there is fewer homeless people. There's a lot more parking. It's a lot cleaner. And I actually really, really like it. Do I miss being kind of like closer to all this stuff? I do. But what I'm finding is there's actually a lot going on up here in North County as well. And it's just opened up different and new areas to explore. I would say the same thing is true in Atlanta. You can live ITP, but if you need to live OTP or choose to live OTP, there is stuff out there. I know there were a bazillion restaurants that I never got to try because I refused to go OTP. There is stuff out there. Now that I don't live in Atlanta anymore, I will never live OTP. And I always said I would never live OTP, but don't ever say never because you never know. And there are good things in both locations. They're just a little different of a lifestyle. The thing I did love about Atlanta is it really was a big city with a small town feel. I felt like everyone kind of always went to all the same events, right? Like there was an event pretty much every weekend. There was some sort of festival or something going on, and like everyone would go to it, and you would see people that you knew at everything you went to. Every time I went out to dinner, pretty much I saw people I knew. Every festival I went to, I would run into people I knew. Like it was just kind of had this small town feel. I don't feel like that's true of San Diego. I have run into people I've known places, but it's so much bigger and everything is more spread out. And so while there are cute little neighborhoods all throughout both Atlanta and San Diego, the ones in Atlanta are much smaller and quainter, and the ones in San Diego are just bigger. So they might have like kind of a main street or something like that, but their main street may be like blocks and blocks or a mile long or something, whereas in Atlanta, it's like 2 blocks long. So just know that's kind of the big difference. San Diego is definitely a larger geographic area, and it's also a much larger population-wise. All right, the third thing is the weather. So this one's kind of like a duh. We all know that the weather is different. In Atlanta, we have hot, humid summers with lots of rain. We do get some snow in the winter. Usually it's not more than an inch, like once or twice a year, and it melts really quickly, but it does happen. And you will have lots of below freezing days in Atlanta. So you'll have on average 48 days below freezing in Atlanta and 113 rain days, whereas in San Diego, the average is 21 days of rain, and we just don't really do the whole below freezing thing. Our cold is like in the 50s, like that's really cold. We kind of joke that it's 70 degrees and sunny all the time here, and that's not true, but it kind of feels like it. The thing I found moving back to San Diego is that it's kind of always summer in the sunshine, but if you go in the shade, it gets cold real quick. So in San Diego, it's all about wearing layers, but you don't necessarily need to have that like winter coats and all the winter gear. You will see people wearing that stuff. I definitely do, because the kind of cold it gets here is really cold for what it is, even though somebody who lives in Atlanta might not think that it's cold at all. The next one is jobs. I was actually really kind of surprised to see how similar some of the jobs are. In Atlanta, we obviously have logistics with the Atlanta airport being such a massive hub and a lot of stuff going through there. But we also have logistics here in San Diego because we have a port and a lot of stuff comes through the port of San Diego. We also have aerospace in both locations. Biotech is big in both locations, and agriculture is big in both locations. Kind of the big differences is that Atlanta has become known as the Hollywood of the South, and it most definitely is. If you live in Atlanta, you know that there's constantly filming going on. You'll often run into big stars. It's lots of fun. Whereas in San Diego, it's a lot of military. So many of the people who live here are military or retired military. And then of course, we also have a ton of defense contractors here. And because it's San Diego, tourism is obviously huge. The cost of living. So I don't know how much has to be said on this. Forbes says that the cost of housing is 107% more in San Diego than Atlanta. So yes, it costs a lot to have a home here, to rent a home, to anything with a home here. Whereas the overall cost of living is 29% higher in San Diego than Atlanta. So if you are moving here, plan for that. Yes, wages will be higher here. They might not be higher enough to offset the additional cost of living. To put those numbers that I just said in dollar terms, if you make $70,000 in Atlanta, you will need to make $100,000 here in San Diego to have a similar quality of life. The average rent in San Diego is pushing $3,000, whereas the average rent in Atlanta is just around $2,000. Let's go on to the sixth thing, which is things to do. There is so much to do in both of these locations. I always felt living in Atlanta that there was like a never-ending supply of things to do. There were like touristy things, and then there were festivals, and there were like shows, and there was just always something to do. San Diego's the same. I will say, as I said before, it felt like kind of everyone was going to the same things in Atlanta, whereas in San Diego, there's just a bazillion different things to do. So everyone's going to all the different things, but there are a ton of things to do. So we have lots of touristy things in San Diego. Of course, we've got all the water sports that you can do here. We've got the zoo, we've got Balboa Park, we've got Coronado, we've got there's a bazillion things to do here. In Atlanta, you have all of the touristy things like Stone Mountain and CNN tour and the World of Coke and everything that's going on in Atlanta. There's a ton there too, the Beltline and all of that. Both places have botanic gardens. I will say, I think the Atlanta one is better. I prefer it. There are festivals here just like they are in Atlanta. They're just not a way of life here in San Diego as they are in Atlanta. Outdoor activities in San Diego are different than in Atlanta. In Atlanta, obviously in the winter, you're just not really gonna go outside a lot because it's really cold. In the summer, it's hard to go outside because it's really, really hot. But there is hiking in Atlanta. There are some places where you could go paddleboarding and stuff like that. There's obviously the river, so you can go, shoot the hooch and go tubing down the river. But here in San Diego, it's like all about being outside. So we're all about hiking. We're all about going to the bay. We're all about going paddleboarding and kayaking and just, going to the beach and like basically being outside because you can do it all year round. The differences with like hiking, for example, is that in Atlanta, there are trees, so there's shade. So even if it is a hot day, you can at least be covered in shade. Here in San Diego, a lot of people just stop hiking during the summer entirely because it gets really hot and there is no shade. We do not have trees here. We have shrubs, we have desert. So most of our hiking is done either very, very early in the morning or after dark, and then in the winter when it's much cooler. Whereas in Atlanta, you can, in theory hike all year, but you do have to deal with a lot of rain and then the heat and the cold, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. So kind of big differences there. Just don't expect to see a lot of trees and greenery here in San Diego if you are going hiking. The seventh thing I want to talk about is sports. I'm not a big sports person, so I'm not going to go real deep into this, but the big difference is that San Diego has Padres. And kind of kidding, but I'm kind of not. There's really not a ton else here. We do have the Wave, which is the women's soccer team. We are getting a Major League Soccer team, men's soccer team here as well in a couple of years. But other than that, we do not have football. Whereas Atlanta obviously has the Falcons and the Braves and the soccer. And I mean, it's kind of got everything. I totally miss Atlanta United games. And I'm hoping that the San Diego Major League Soccer team will kind of have a similar feel, but I am not really expecting a ton on that because I feel like Atlanta United is very special. And if you ever have a chance to go to a game, if you haven't, definitely do it. It's a ton of fun. Okay, the restaurant scene. There is a huge restaurant scene in both locations. So I feel like both of them have been kind of the up and coming places. Atlanta, I feel like is a little more up and come already and is really well known as like a kind of a foodie destination. San Diego is still kind of working its way there. There are a ton of restaurants opening here all the time. There are some very good restaurants opening here all the time. I have yet to find like amazing places that I like have to go back to here in San Diego. Now that being said, I have been here at a time when it's been COVID and stuff. So I've done a lot of like eating out or like, you know, takeout, and haven't gotten to try as many things because of COVID. But I do feel like I prefer the food in Atlanta a little bit. But I'm looking forward to seeing San Diego evolve. The interesting thing about San Diego is that there are so many different like places that are kind of burgeoning food scenes in San Diego. So Oceanside is like totally becoming like a food mecca. You know, different spots in San Diego have different things. So there's a ton of different places you can go to try all kinds of stuff. And we both locations have kind of an international center. So Convoy is in San Diego and Buford Highway is in Atlanta. And that's where you're gonna find like all of the really good international food. So both are good. They're just different. I feel like Atlanta does the, you know, kind of Southern food, like down home cooking, like things you want to eat all the time, just like with a twist. They do that really, really well. I don't feel like I've found that as much in San Diego. Of course, San Diego has way more Mexican food. So there's that. Another difference that I don't think you'll find in any other video is clothing. So I found this very interesting when I moved to Atlanta. I did not fit in. So I grew up in California, in Southern California. I grew up like jeans and a t-shirt pretty much every single day is what I wear. Like I'm just very casual all the time. And in Atlanta, people dressed up. So summer dresses were very much a thing. Like anything you went to, everyone was wearing summer dresses. We don't wear as many dresses here in California, and I just didn't own any. So I had to like learn to buy dresses and learn how to dress up a little, because I felt like everything I went to, I was always underdressed. Whereas if you dress the way you do in Atlanta here, you might be a little overdressed. People will just think you're fancy, but you know, they'll probably appreciate it, but they'll just think you're fancy. So I've enjoyed kind of going back to being super casual, but what I have noticed also is that here in San Diego, I feel like I need like short sleeves a lot more. Whereas in Atlanta, it was like either tank tops or like wool sweaters. Like I needed to either be like, I'm dying of the heat or I'm freezing cold. Whereas in San Diego, I'm kind of like, I need layers. I need like a little bit of coverage, but not too much, because it's like pretty warm out, but it's, you know, not crazy hot. So like short sleeves, I've had to buy a lot more short sleeves. I feel like I kind of was missing this whole category. So some differences in the way people dress here. You'll find that layers are just a thing. The Patagonia jackets are huge here in San Diego. Flip-flops are something we wear pretty much every day. So definitely a difference in the way people dress. The next one is driving. I don't think you're gonna find a lot of people talking about this either on videos, but to me, this was a really big deal. I always said that the one thing that was going to drive me out of Atlanta was the way people drove. I despise driving in Atlanta. I had road rage on a daily basis, pretty much on an every time I left the house basis. In San Diego, it rarely happens. I know what to expect from California drivers. I feel like we know what we're doing out here. In Atlanta, like, I just don't feel like any of the laws are followed. Like nobody knows how to merge to save their lives. I'm walking here. People don't understand stop signs. They don't, like, if you want to go faster on a freeway, you're pretty much going to be in the slow lane. Like the fast lane's slow. I just despise driving in Atlanta. I also feel like the traffic is worse in Atlanta. I would rather be in any traffic in San Diego over being in traffic on the 285 any day of the week. So yeah, also all the people in Atlanta who tell you they drive really fast, like, I don't know what they're smoking, but they don't drive that fast. When I moved to Atlanta, I got 2 speeding tickets, 2 super speeder tickets in the first 6 months I was there, because I was driving the way I normally drove, and I had to literally change the way I drove in order to stop getting tickets in Atlanta. So they don't drive that fast there. Here, if I'm going below 80, that's bizarre, and usually I'm going 85, like pretty much at all times. Atlanta, they think that's what they're doing, but they're not. Like 70 was kind of fast there. 75 was like pushing it. So yeah, things are just different there, and I just say that driving's way better here in San Diego. All right, the 11th one, dog friendliness. So I think that San Diego is more dog friendly. You can take dogs into a lot of businesses here. People take them into the grocery store. They're not supposed to, they do it anyway. People take them into Starbucks. Most Starbucks just let them. You can just kind of get away with taking your dogs to most places here. Most restaurants, if they have an outdoor area, they're probably gonna allow dogs. Atlanta was less so. Like you definitely had to kind of plan ahead a little more. There were also fewer dog parks there. Here, there's like every single little area has a dog park, and we have dog beaches. So there's just a lot you can do with your dog here in San Diego, and I feel like it's a lot more dog friendly than in Atlanta. Now, the cost of pet care is much higher here, but some people do take their dogs to Tijuana to get less expensive Mexican vet care. I have not felt comfortable doing that, but that is a potential option. So definitely different. Out here, fleas are kind of just as bad as out there. Like, you know, I think everywhere thinks they have the worst fleas. No, it's really bad in both places. You have to do all the flea prevention regardless of where you live. So yeah, definitely dog friendlier, but know that it is also more expensive. And finally, it's just kind of the way everything looks. So in Atlanta, it's known as the city in the trees. Like it has a ton of trees. San Diego doesn't have as many trees. We've got palm trees, we have trees, but it's not like a blanket of trees. It's like trees that were purposely planted for landscaping. It's brown here, it's dry, there's shrubs, there's canyons everywhere. Atlanta is very big into their hills, and they do have a lot of hills, but what we have, they have like hills as in like they're kind of in these rolling hills. We have canyons, so you'll be going along and there's just a canyon in your backyard, or that you have to drive through to get somewhere, or whatever. There's canyons everywhere. Obviously, we also have the coast, but because this is a desert, the plants are all very different, and I personally love this. I loved in Atlanta. There were so many flowers, and it was so green and beautiful during the summer, and it was just lush. Here, the plants are just different and unique. We have succulents. We have all the succulents, and they are all so unique and different and very Dr. Seussy, and I think it's a ton of fun to kind of see all the variation and all the differences in all the weird plants that grow in a desert where it's just very inhospitable to grow. So anyway, the look and feel of both places is just quite different. One's green, one's brown. So that's it. That's what I've got for you today. What do you think? Did I miss anything? Did I get anything wrong? Do you have any other questions about either one of these cities? I would love to answer them. Comment below with any questions you have. Don't forget to reach out to me if you are planning on moving to either city. I'd love to help you get in touch with somebody in Atlanta, and I'd love to help you if you're planning on moving to San Diego. Give me a call. Don't forget, if this was at all helpful, to give it a thumbs up and to push the little bell and subscribe so that you get notified whenever I put out new content.